Hey, house stackers, welcome to the Stacking Houses podcast. I'm your host, Damon Santa Maria, where we're helping working professionals create a solid plan B, a side hustle of passive streams of income through real estate investing. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, my partner in crime, Mr. Jim Garvin, who's going to take us through a recent property that he just acquired. So with that, Jim, welcome to Stacking Houses podcast.
Thank you, Damon. I'm extremely excited to be here. And it's fun to be on this side of the microphone. Usually you and I are cohorts and interviewing people for our classes and doing this. So I'm a little nervous. I'm worried that you're gonna, sling some really tough questions that I'm not prepared for, but super excited for our discussion.
Absolutely. So house stackers, our goal for each show is to provide you with some practical and inspiring information so that you can create a solid financial plan for yourself. And today we want to give you some extra value. If you go out to our website at stackinghouses.com and you click on the free training at the top, we're going to take you through exactly how Jim and I are finding some excellent properties in today's landscape. So be sure to check that out as well. Jim, why don't you take us through the property that you're looking at or that you just acquired?
So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm buzzing. I've talked to you about it before, and we should definitely cover it in one of our other conversations. But, I've got these network of agents that are out mining opportunities for me. And guys, again, go to our classes because we talk about how important it is to get opportunities coming to you. And this was one of those. So I have an agent. She specializes in a very specific kind of house that we're going after, and actually found this on the MLS. There are deals on the MLS, people. You have to mine deep and you have to be patient with it. But if you are, these kind of deals can come up. So profile is single family house here in St. Louis, Missouri, in the county, in what I would say is probably B-, B+ sort of area from a socioeconomic perspective. Good schools, good access to jobs and highways, etc. It is currently a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Almost all the houses in St. Louis have basements, kind of that Rust Belt thing. It's single story and it's about 1,000 square foot. It went on the market at $97,000 a couple months ago. When she sent it to me, it was at $89,000, and we went under contract last Tuesday at $85,000 after a little bit of haggling with the sellers.
Nice. So to your point, there are still deals on the MLS if you know how to find them, if you're working with an agent. And so I guess the pro tip here is, don't give up on the MLS, right?
Yeah, and just really be confident, in what you're looking for. I mean, I think my 2 quick, tips are be very focused on what you're trying to find. You'll walk through our material and it'll tell you, hey, this is how to figure out how much down payment and closing cost amount you need to buy that first house, to buy that 5th house. Why waste your time looking for something that's 2x that if you don't have access to those funds? So it's trying to narrow the funnel, but also get people to stuff things in the funnel for you. And so I feel like in this case, it's a good example of that.
That's great. So take us a little bit deeper into the profile of this property. What attracted you? Some of the pros and maybe some of the cons that you had to kind of consider in buying this property.
Well, obviously, the first thing we said to ourselves, especially in this seller's market here in late 2021, why is it on the market for this long? And to give you a little more insight, it's about a half mile from another house that I own in the area that's the exact same floor plan. And that house has rented for historically $1,100 to $1,300 a month. So it was kind of like, okay, this is too good to be true. Why is this still on? Newly renovated, brand new LVP, brand new countertops, bathroom was gorgeous. So it just there was something wrong. Well, turns out we figured out what that was. It's sitting in a flood zone.
Oh,
So
wow.
immediately it's like, oh no, how do we think about this? What do we do? Flood zones, for you listeners out there, are tricky. You really got to be smart about them. And in fact, I think, Damon, you've even said, maybe in your book, maybe in our other materials, stay away if you can. But I'm going to walk you through how to be crazy with the flood zone house today.
Yeah. So I've had one property that I acquired back in 2013. It was my only property on a floodplain, and in the beginning, when I ran my pro forma, the numbers still made sense. And this is before really private flood insurance became a thing, and so everything was going through FEMA. And for my experience with FEMA was that they could raise your rates and basically double my rates. And so what was once a cash flowing property, was quick. That cash flow was quickly eaten up by my FEMA, policy and my premium. And so it wasn't until I found private flood insurance that I turned that property back around. But the other nuance to FEMA at the time, I don't know if this was still true, but you can't cancel your policy midterm, right? You have to wait for that year to be up, or you have to sell your property in order to cancel the policy. So I was kind of in a tricky situation. So take us through your decision tree, and it sounded like there was a huge list of pros, going for you in this property. It was already rehabbed. It was the same floor plan. It sounded like from a cash on cash return, the numbers made sense. So take us through that decision tree of why ultimately you decided to move forward with this property, knowing that it was on a floodplain.
Yeah, so I think it's an amazing question. So the first thing that we look for is how many at-risk properties do we have in our total portfolio? Because it is a probability game, right? At some point, if you had nothing but floodplain houses in your portfolio, no matter how they're insured, one of them is going to hit. And when they hit, and when you have to, go and pay that deductible and deal with all of the mess, it takes a lot of time away from you. We keep talking and preaching about creating passive income flows. I'm not trying to create more headaches. Today in our portfolio, we only have one other house that's in a flood zone, and it's in a 500-year flood zone. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. You probably have heard those terms, listeners, over the years. What's a 20 versus a 50 versus 100 versus 500? But it basically nets down to what is the probability of that home or that house going, having a flood situation. Now, to Damon's earlier example about FEMA, that is always emerging and changing. And so water is an incredible resource, but it also can be a very destructive resource. And, just now, yesterday, we're seeing New York City being almost completely flooded, right? So this is, September 2nd of 2021. So my point is, in thinking about the risk profile, number one, what percentage is that risk of our entire portfolio? Number two, realize that however you underwrite it, things change over time. To Damon's example, FEMA can say, hey, this is a 100-year flood today. And then through studies and real life experience, and as the world changes, all of a sudden it's a 50-year and your rates change. So I kind of put that as a foundation. Then we dig into the actual, financials. Here's the bottom line question. Is there enough room on a cash on cash basis to handle the insurance premiums of flood insurance? And how much risk is there in that flood actually happening? There's a big difference between a 500-year floodplain and a 20-year floodplain, as an example. So we went and looked at it. The great thing is we had the comp half mile away of 1,100 to 1,300. The house is currently a HUD occupant, HUD tenant, whose lease goes through December of this year. She's paying $1,064 a month. The note on it, because we got it at 85, and our lending's a little bit more commercial, is $488 a month. total cost of $840 a month. So she's paying $1,064. We're $864, $850, and that's with a maintenance reserve. So we're carrying, cash on cash, $202 a month as is.
Yeah.
However, she's going to take a turn, possibly. Either she increases her rents or we go, let her go. She seems to be a great tenant, very clean house. And now we can push that property $1,200 a month, taking it up to almost $400 a month in cash on cash return, $4,800 a year. I mean, essentially a no-brainer. Yeah. All of that includes a private policy, flood insurance private policy for $699 a year, $1,000 deductible. Let me pause there.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the numbers definitely make sense. You've thought of your maintenance reserve. You've thought of, future increases in rent. So, what we preach here today is that the numbers have to make sense day one, and hopefully you have some great upside in the future. You don't want to speculate on things, but I'm glad when you built out your pro forma that you've built in all of these different items in there of what could happen in the future. And it sounds like there could be some upside as well. Living in Houston and having flood insurance, that's just a way of life. St. Louis, it's probably hit or miss depending on, where the river is and how much rain you get that year. But, in Houston and along the Gulf Coast, it's just a way of life. And, you deal with that in terms of paying for those premiums, and you hope and pray that, there's a mild hurricane season or, a mild storm season, and you don't have to use that policy. But that's good to hear.
But Damon, can I tell you, it gets better. So
let's hear about it.
Here we go. So 85,000, right? Plus closing cash. We're buying in cash in 3 weeks. I'm actually accelerating. We had a month closing. I actually went back to the seller's agent and the title company and said, can we get this done in 3 weeks? Because I want this property here generating cash flow now. At the same time, I call my bank yesterday and I say, I want a loan on this property. They're saying, well, do you already own it? Because if I was buying it and the buying mechanism was a loan, then the bank would, although they do appraisal, they would take the purchase price as the standard for which they lend it to us. And we have 80-20 lending, guidelines. So if it's a $100,000 loan, we need to come with $20,000 plus closing costs to that. But since we already own it for cash, they don't take it on that. They go and appraise it. Well, 2 houses down from this house, exact same floor plan, exact same square footage, not as nice in terms of look and feel, sold 10 days ago for $139,000. Wow. So that's incredible. The comp is going to be phenomenal. The bank's going to come back. Let's say it's even 130 on the appraisal, right? And they're going to say to me, Jim, you can lend up to 111,000. This house is in great condition. The only thing that I don't like about it is it doesn't have central air, and the roof is probably 5 years away. So going with the BRRRR methodology, what we're going to do, or a pre-BRRRR methodology, is take our loan for $95,000. That'll cover $85,000 for the loan, $3,000 to $4,000 in closing costs, and that's probably on the high side. And then we're going to go ahead and put in a brand new air conditioning condenser and a new roof, making this house bulletproof besides the rain for the next 10 to 15 years.
That's incredible. And the listeners, I want you to rewind this if you need to, but the financing part of what Jim is doing is where real estate can really help you accelerate your cash flow and make these deals make incredible sense, right? Because if you pay cash for this property and then you're able to pull that cash out and then some because of a much higher appraisal, so Jim, at the end of the day, once you, I guess, refinance and put, a loan on this, how much money are you into this property?
Zero.
Exactly. You're into this money, into this property for zero money out of pocket. And so, listeners, what does that mean for you? It's an infinite return on your money, because now you've pulled your cash out. You have no money into the deal. You're still cash flowing. And so your return, mathematically speaking, is an infinite return. And that, my friends, is awesome.
And they're out there. Again, it's on the MLS. Listen, I'm not trying to say take floodplains lightly. I mean, I'm happy to talk more about that and how to get more information. But guys, there are deals. You just have to go through 100 of them to find this. And if you could literally build your portfolio with no money down, that I say that lightly, build your portfolio by putting money down, buying cash, and then refinancing in the smart deals, paying for these houses to have all those improvements to make it A, very appealing to your tenants, but B, noiseless. You don't want a bunch of noisy houses. That doesn't help. But if you have very well-built houses that have all the amenities and different things to take care of the modern tenant, they will pay a premium for that, and you'll reap the benefits. So again, hopefully some of these concepts are making sense. Our course covers a ton of this material, how to find them, how to do all the renovation pieces. And I'm excited for some of you listeners out there to go and get your own houses that look like this.
Yeah, this is an incredible success story. I certainly hope it plays out the way that you're projecting it does, because if it does, it's an awesome find. And Jim makes an excellent point here, that these deals are out there. You do need to have a team helping you search for these deals. It doesn't hurt to look on the MLS yourself and set up alerts, et cetera. But these deals are out there for the taking. And so, this is a great example, Jim, a future case study in the works, I would say.
Absolutely.
So, well, Jim, anything else you want to say about this property or anything else you're working on before we close out here today?
No, the only thing I wanted to leave our listeners with, if you are looking at a flood plain house, some resources. So FEMA, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Damon, if that's okay. FEMA actually has, one second, please. Can you see this, Damon, on your screen?
Yes.
So I don't know if you can catch the URL, but basically FEMA.gov. Listeners, and then in there is something called the MAP self. Let me clarify this real quick. MAP Services Center. So you're going to FEMA as a website, and you're looking for MAP Services Center, and you're going to put in that address, right? And so this map is a rendering then of what that area looks like. And so a couple of things we're taking away from this. Number one, no one's asking you to be an expert in floodplains and all the geoscience that goes into them, geohydroscience that goes into them. But it can be a helpful visual. And as you talk to insurance agents, you want to continue to increase your IQ of how to engage with them. And so the thing about this, or the thing to take away, is that this, and we kind of look down here, right, in terms of some of this color coding. I don't know how noticeable this is. This is a 1% chance of flooding. And so what that means is if you had a 1% chance of flooding every year, it's the same as 100-year flood. 1 year out of the 100, you have a strong probability chance of taking a flood on. So that gives you a visual where you can go look up this sort of information. You can have more educated discussions with insurance agents. By the way, please talk to them. We are in no way saying that this is a riskless purchase. It is, has tons of risk, but like anything, the more you build your portfolio, a certain amount of risk can be taken on. And so hopefully that's a good resource. If you have any other questions about that, you'll notice it in our, if you sign up for our course, we actually interview insurance agents on there. Sam Fink is one of them. If you, set up a coaching session with Damon and I, we can review deals with you that may have this and point you in the direction of other insurance agents that may be able to give you very helpful information from the National Insurance Claims Database or underwrite the private insurance policy for flood themselves. So with that, I'll stop sharing and back over to you, Damon.
Okay. No, that's incredibly helpful. And I know that many, municipalities around the United States have their own even more specific, flood maps that you can look at depending on your geography, where you live or where your property is. So that's incredibly helpful to look at that. And FEMA, I don't know how often they update those maps, but I know here in Houston, after every major hurricane, they have to go back and look at, new areas that have flooded, and consequently, where they've done additional drainage and, built up levees, et cetera, to prevent flooding in the future as well. So those maps do change on a periodic basis. So, just something to be aware of as well.
That's a really good point, because, a lot of the floodplains where we're at, like you mentioned, St. Louis is obviously, think about the arch for those that may not be familiar with St. Louis. It's right on the Mississippi River. And so there's almost like a mini river delta that happens in Missouri that drives all the water to the Mississippi before it goes down to the Gulf. A lot of the floodplains have been established over the last 75 to 100 years and have never been revisited. During that time, obviously, as a city, water is not helpful. And so to promote business, to make, even things very safe, the Corps of Engineers here in Missouri, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, have done a lot from an infrastructure perspective to get that water and create safe conduits to get it out of the city.
Right.
So understanding the local landscape, if you're going to do remote investing, is absolutely critical, because what a flood probability could look like here in St. Louis, Missouri, could look completely different in Cincinnati, as an example. And so think through those things, talk to experts, don't try to make this decision on your own. But if you find the right property, insure it right, you can make some good money. And that's what we're here for. Over to you.
Yeah. The last thing that, as we're kind of talking through this, and I'm not all that familiar with the process, but you can also get what's called an elevation certificate. And essentially, it's someone coming to your property and certifying the actual elevation of the property and bouncing that against these most current flood maps. And sometimes the elevation is off. And if you get a certified, what's called flood elevation certificate, it could help your situation in that your insurance premium may be less based off that information. They may be going off of some old data, and they're assigning risk in terms of a higher premium for that policy. And again, I'm not all that familiar with that process, but it's maybe something you want to ask your insurance agent. If you find that perfect property that just happens to be, on a floodplain. So, okay, well, awesome, Jim. This was another awesome, insightful episode of the Stacking Houses podcast. And listeners, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our goal is to provide you with incredible value each and every show. And so for today's episode, if you want to go out to stackinghouses.com, you'll look at the top, and we have a free training that we're going to take you through and drop some incredible, valuable information, more specifically, 3 ways that Jim and I are finding incredible properties in this landscape. So be sure to check that out. And until next time, happy investing. This is Jim and Damon from stackinghouses.com. Take care.
Take care, guys. Like and subscribe.